All right, let's get into one of the most unbelievable, most infamous moments in all of sports history. This is a story about a wild celebration that, in the blink of an eye, turned into a national tragedy. We're going to break down how a team, the host nation of the World Cup, got knocked out by a single run, a run they didn't even bother to score. Just listen to that. That was the mood in Durban on March 3rd, 2003. Imagine it. You're hosting the Cricket World Cup, the stadium is absolutely electric, and your team, South Africa, is on the very brink. But not a victory. They were on the brink of a shocking, humiliating exit from their own party. I mean, it sounds completely impossible, doesn't it? How does that even happen? Well, it did. And to really get our heads around this catastrophic failure, we have to pull it apart piece by piece. It starts with some fuzzy math, then a broken chain of communication, and it all ends with one fateful decision made in the pouring rain. Okay, so let's get right to the heart of the problem. This entire massive disaster boils down to one thing: a fundamental misunderstanding of a super complicated rain rule that was known as the Duckworth-Lewis method, or DL for short. Now, the key to this whole mess, the thing that everything hinges on, is a tiny but crucial little distinction. The DL sheet, which is basically the Bible in a rain-soaked match, it doesn't actually give you the score you need to win. It gives you something called a par score, and that's the score you need to tie the game. This one little detail, well, it turned out to be everything. So here it is in black and white. The South African dressing room is looking at a piece of paper, and on that paper it says the par score at the end of the 45th over with 6 wickets down is 229. But, and this is the big but, to actually win the match and stay alive in their home World Cup, they needed one more run. They needed 230. And here's a look at basically the very DL sheet the team was working off of. You can see it right there, clear as day. Find the row for 45 overs completed, go across to 6 wickets lost, and the number is 229. The management saw that number, they fixated on it, but they completely and fatally misinterpreted it as the winning target. You know, having the right information is totally useless if you can't get it to the people who need it. And that brings us to the second massive point of failure, a complete and total communication breakdown. It was like a game of telephone, where the message got lost somewhere between the coach's table and the batsman's ears. So here's exactly how that chain of failure just crumbled. The coach, Eric Simons, hands the sheet to the substitute fielder. He tries to physically run it out onto the field, but the umpire, Steve Buckner, does his job and stops him. You can't do that. So now the message has to be shouted from the boundary line. A single number, 229, gets passed along. But the most important part, that this number is only good enough for a tie, is completely lost in translation. Okay, now we're going to see how that one miscalculation and that one broken message led directly to a tactical disaster in the 45th over. This is the moment where the bad theory becomes a tragic reality. The rain is hammering down, and the match has reached its absolute breaking point. South Africa's entire tournament, everything they've worked for, now rests on the final 2 balls of this single over. On the 5th ball, facing the legendary spinner Mattia Marulatharan, the batsman Mark Boucher just connects perfectly. He smashes the ball, sends it sailing deep into the stands for 6 runs. It was a clutch, heroic, pressure cooker of a shot. And that incredible 6 took South Africa's score to 229, the exact number he had been told was the magic target, the number that would, supposedly, win them the game. Or so he thought. And he just celebrates wildly, pumping his fists in the air. The Durban crowd goes absolutely insane. In that single moment, every single person in that stadium, everyone on that team, believed that that was it. That was the winning shot. That was the moment that sent them into the next round. So what do you do when you think you've already won? You play it smart, you play it safe. On the very last ball of the over, Boucher makes what seems like the logical choice. He just defends the ball, blocks it to make sure he doesn't get out, and he turns down an easy single. And immediately after he does that, the umpires signal for the covers as the rain just becomes torrential. Play is stopped. But here's the absolute tragic irony of it all. Up in the commentary box, the great Tony Greig knew. He said it live on air as that final ball was being bowled. He knew they needed one more run. But the men who actually mattered, the men on the field holding the bats, they had no idea. The players never came back on the field. The rain was final. And the consequences of this one-run mistake were swift, they were brutal, and they would go on to haunt South African cricket for decades to come. The fallout was just immediate. The match was officially declared a tie, which wasn't enough. South Africa was out of their own World Cup. The captain, Sean Pollock, was fired less than 2 weeks later. And maybe most painfully of all, it cemented this narrative that under pressure, South Africa chokes. Years later, Pollock explained that the team's leadership structure was part of the problem. See, after the massive match-fixing scandal with his predecessor, Hansi Cronje, the cricket board had deliberately taken power away from the captain. They created this system of shared responsibility that, in this one critical moment, just collapsed into no responsibility at all. You know, the Durban debacle really stands as one of sport's most powerful cautionary tales. It's a lesson in communication, in pressure, and in the razor-thin margin between total triumph and absolute disaster. And it leaves us with this one final question. How can a single error, a simple failure to add +1, go on to shape an entire nation's sporting identity?